Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff sat down with MSNBC this week to talk about masculinity and gender equity. Let's watch.
Has being second gentleman changed your own view of perceived gender roles or what it means to be a man?
This is something I've thought about a lot and something I've spoken about a lot. There's too much of toxicity, it's masculine toxicity out there, and we've kind of confused what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine, where you've got this trope out there that you've got to be tough and angry and lash out to be strong. Just the opposite. Strength is how you show your love for people. Strength is how you are for people and how you have their back and how you stick up for other people.
I find this whole discussion very confused. Honestly, confused coming from multiple directions, because are we even supposed to recognize these as different categories now, male and female, man and women?
Well, masculinity and femininity, the argument goes, is not linked to your sex.
There's also a way about talking about it that's just actually reinforcing of it, even if you're trying the stereotype of men or masculinity being rugged and harsh, and those things you talk about, has eroded dramatically over our lifetimes. And to some degree, I'm not sure, I'm sure there are still some people who kind of cling to that as the stereotype of how men are supposed to be, and it's unhealthy for them, but it feels like it's being made into a thing when it's it's going away as a thing of its own accord.
So I would agree with you to some extent. Obviously, the traditional understandings of what it meant to be masculine have eroded a great deal. There was a time when I was growing up many a year ago where we regularly said things like metrosexual to describe men who, showered. I mean, the bar was low. If you wore a well-fitting suit, it was, oh my God, I don't know. I've been the object of that slander. I wasn't going to point fingers. I wasn't going to name names, Robby. Yeah. But so yes, we have come a long way. But we have come that way in part because of conversations like these. I don't know necessarily that this person is a person that we all want having this conversation, but because of conversations where folks have interrogated why it is that they feel like men have to constrain themselves fairly narrowly. I will say this as a woman. It is the realm of acceptable female behavior, perhaps because of women's lib movements and stuff like that, is so much broader than the realm of acceptable men's behavior. Women I can wear a suit just like yours tomorrow if I want, or I can wear a dress. I can hold hands with my girlfriends in a way that is not considered to be sexual or weird. We can sleep in the same bed. If my mom visits or we go to a hotel room, we can share a bed and nobody thinks that sort of thing. I mean, women can be tough. You can be kind of butch. You can be feminine. And there are all these ways you can be acceptable in society in a way that for men, still, if you are a straight man playing with any kind of gender fluidity, there's your sexual preferences are implicated in a way that isn't necessarily.
If you're famous, you'll be showered with awards for doing it. But I see
sometimes, but you're also mired in controversy.
Yeah.
There are two sides to this. For every person who thinks that Harry Styles is adorable in his sparkly little outfits, there's another person who says he's gay baiting, and there's another person who says that he is normalizing queerness in a way that is hurting our children. Right?
Yeah.
So
people have to be upset about things.
And to your other point about have we already come so far, is it worth interrogating? I mean, there was just, I don't know if you saw this controversy, was it a Vogue cover or Vanity Fair cover with Rihanna last month with her partner and her child?
Yes, I did see what you're talking about.
And
you want to
there
go
was
into that
a great deal of controversy in the photograph, and maybe we can pull it up if they can find it in time.
Yeah.
In the photograph, Rihanna, they're walking along the beach. Rihanna's in the lead. Her husband's standing behind her.
It's a really beautiful photo.
Holding his hand, and he's carrying the child.
The husband's holding the child, yeah.
And the internet went crazy saying this is Rihanna being too masculine. She should let her partner lead. He's carrying the baby. He's cucked. They did the thing where they draw the angles, where they they analyze people's posture.
I mostly saw black people saying
yes.
to be
Yeah, it was an in-group conversation. But
it got a lot of pushback, I think, because I saw some conservatives pushing back on it, saying, we've raised the issue of the lack of family structure or two-parent households, particularly in low-income Black communities, and here's a positive, here is proper behavior being modeled of a family still together with a baby. So why would you want to cast aspersions on that? This is good behavior being modeled.
Sure, and I definitely did see some conservatives that were critical of this as well.
Did you? I didn't see it, but I believe you. But
yeah, and people like Candace Owens have been very critical.
I don't think she was critical of this.
She was. I was going to say she was very critical of the Harry Styles styling and things like that. I mean, there are a lot of critiques that
Candace
basically
Owens
amount
giveth
to
and Candace Owens taketh away. But I don't think she was critical of this.
This very narrow version of masculinity. She said of Harry Styles, we need to bring back manly men. I don't know. It's very odd. I mean, this has gotten so perverse that you have people making arguments like these kind of Andrew Tate aligned people on the internet who say things like, is it gay to be with a woman? Like, is it too soft for me to cater to a woman or engage with a woman physically in ways that are submissive to me as a man? And like, it's like, wait a minute, are we at a place where it's like having a sexual relationship with a woman is gay now? Like, as a man, it's gotten this really warped thing. But people have confused ideas of like what it means to not submit, but to compromise in a relationship, to want to make a partner happy, that are being mixed up with masculinity and femininity in a toxic way.
Let me steel man the conservative. I'm not saying this is necessarily my view, but the conservative beef with the whole people who keep railing about toxic masculinity being bad.
Sure.
They'll say that you're stigmatizing one way, that these people are stigmatizing men who are still traditionally masculine. And if it was just, well, any man can be, you can have a masculine man, you can have a feminine man, people can be however they want, that's fine. But actually people saying, who are anti-toxic masculinity, aren't saying everyone should be free to pursue whatever self-expression makes them happy. They're stigmatizing one kind of manliness, and that is traditional manliness.
Sure.
And I saw that criticism, for instance, with remember the Gillette, the shaving ad that maybe you don't remember. It was just considered radioactive in conservative circles. I was brought on to conservative media to talk about it. It's from their perspective, it was very dismissive, very derogatory toward traditionally strong masculine men. It was all about.
Did someone shave and then girls liked him or something?
It was all about how men should be more feminine or more feminist, or there's like a political implication to it, or something like that.
Okay, look, I obviously. I don't think that's if your natural orientation is to be more traditionally masculine, whatever that means. Here's the problem. The critique isn't of masculinity. Although I think some people make a bad critique and they let it get slippery and sloppy. The critique should be of toxic masculinity in the same way that my critique of identity politics isn't a critique of identity. Mm-hmm. It's not bad to be white or Italian or black or whatever from Michigan. Like, we all have identities. Yeah. The problem is what people do with it.
When you say from Michigan?
Purple ties.
You walk that back.
All the things that you are having. So toxic masculinity, and we should probably define it better, I think it has more to do with people's feeling restrained in what are traditional notions of masculinity that don't allow for what I think many of us would agree are a normal, healthy range of human emotion and experiences, including being able to be sad, being able to have moments of vulnerability and weakness, and feeling
too much sadness now. People should feel a little less sad.
Okay, but feeling like the masculinity requires you to be aggressive, requires you to be hard, requires you not to be able to express yourself, the full range of human emotion, including love and softness, that all of us experience to some degree or another at different times when it's context appropriate. And the part of toxic masculinity, the toxicity is behaviors that might lead to abusiveness, maladaptive behaviors toward others, the fact that there's such a high incidence of, say, spousal abuse among police officers. That's what people are looking at when they are saying, like, what part of this messaging? It's not about being a man.
No one should be no one should feel obligated to portray a character that is not them, or to conform to some kind of expectations that they don't want to. It is interesting having this conversation in the wake of a lot of reporting and conversations there's been lately about the mental health crisis among young people that is actually almost exclusively a crisis of mental health among young women. There's a lot of conversation about whether smartphones have something to do with it. I've argued with Jonathan Haidt a lot, who's a social psychologist who really points to social media as the culprit for women's dwindling mental health. And he will point out, because the way that young men, they don't engage with social media in as harmful a way, or like video games are not as harmful.
No, they're
and
just looking at all the
them.
Photoshopped photos of women and
that's
voting with their likes.
They're making them happier, and women are feeling this competition. So anyway, my only point in bringing that up is, before anyone gets like too over their skis about toxic masculinity having this really negative effect on men, it's having a negative effect on some men. I totally get it. I'm not really pushing back on that much at all. Something has gone wrong with self-regard that young women have for themselves. I mean, the data is pretty bad.
Well, I think
and I don't know. I don't think it's because there's like too much toxic masculinity.
But I think the difference is, this is not to downplay at all the problems that women are suffering, obviously. But the difference is, I think there's a perception that women's problems are focused inward. It's like a self-esteem problem. It's not liking yourself. It's feeling like you need to set yourself to some, judge yourself by some other standard.
Maybe there aren't enough strong, stereotypically masculine men to sweep them off their feet and rescue them from a dragon something.
But from the men's perspective, it's whether or not they're being pressured to behave in ways that are outwardly manifesting in a way that are harmful. Violence against others, criminal behavior, like really aggressive outward expressions of aggressive. And the other thing I think that really distinguishes it, and why this conversation is a little bit misdirected, especially when I was watching Doug Emhoff talk, you're the vice president's husband. There are policy changes that are underpinning why we are in this moment having a conversation about what's happening with men, especially white men who are experiencing a economic backtrack, the likes of which we've never seen in American history. And so for him to sit there and be only talking about the psychological things when there are traditional masculine roles that are so linked with being an economic provider that men are struggling to be able to fulfill because of the economic precarity in this country, that is why that is a specific conversation that I think is oriented to men and being the traditional provider role that should be had.
Well, last point I wanted to mention before we wrap. There's part of this too where I think conservatives miss the benefit of some of what is even being called toxic masculinity being wound back a little bit, in that like men and young men not having to experience violence, physical violence at nearly the same level as they used to is a good thing. And every now and then I'll see some figure on the right, or maybe a fringe figure on the right, be like, man, it's our boys they're not tough enough because they don't beat each other up enough. No, I'm sorry. Like, it is, but we actually all pretty much agree that being forced to endure violence is wrong. We were all like, everyone, conservatives too, were angry about the slap, right? Because it's just, we regard it as not, you don't just start, you're not supposed to just hit someone. But that was, that was the normal male experience growing up, is to endure horrific violence. When I was in school, that was already like very much had gone away. So I'm sure my predecessor, a generation or two before, would have way more violence. I'm sure now it's even less, and that's a good thing, because that's bad. It's bad stuff.
And studies show that the more violence you're exposed to in your peer group or by your parents translates into violent behavior when you're an adult as well. So.
Yeah. All right, interesting discussion we had there about that. More Rising coming up in just a minute. Please stay with us.